purpose of our closing chat is to take a look at how technology will shape tomorrow. We have three perfect experts to have this discussion. I get to bring to the stage our moderator for the closing fireside chat, which is Jeremy Kahn, AI editor at Fortune. He is joined on stage by two very special guests, one of whom will be a familiar face to you who have attended some of the other sessions today. It is, of course, Dominic Williams, founder and chief scientist of the Definity Foundation. And he is joined by a second very special guest as part of the closing fireside chat. We are thrilled to bring to the stage Ross Perot Jr., chairman and CEO of the Perot Companies and Hillwood. Let's give them a very warm doubles welcome.
Josie.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you to Ross and Dom. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. Ross, you've just come from DC from the Trump inauguration. You're on the transition team for President Trump. And there's two technologies sort of at play here that Dom, is going to talk a bit about. One is AI, and one is Web3, which a lot of people in the room are interested in. Both technologies, have in the past, I think, during the last administration in the U.S., found that the administration wasn't always as friendly as it could be to business development. What are we going to see from the Trump administration when it comes to kind of tech policy? What's your insight, Ross?
Jeremy, thank you. Dom, good to see you. Thanks for the invitation. I think you're going to see there's a lot of optimism, huge amount of optimism in Washington and in the country. Very pro-business, a huge amount of deregulation. And all you have to do is look at the inauguration and who's behind Trump. It's all tech. I mean, so it is a very tech-centric White House. It'll be tech-friendly. It'll lean to deregulation, and it's going to elect the reason the United States tech industry is so strong is we have economic freedom. And he will continue that economic freedom to let entrepreneurs build and create and invest great companies. And really, it'll be strong for the United States.
Right. And Ross, for the people who aren't as familiar with you and what you've been up to, you're very involved in the building of data centers all over the world. And what are we going to see in terms of the growth of the data center build out? And do you think that Trump will enact policies that will be friendly to the creation of more data centers?
The biggest, yes, for sure, because of deregulation. And the biggest challenge you have on data centers is power. And Trump, as you see, is very pro all the above, every power source. He talks about drill, baby, drill, but also it's an all the above strategy. And it's a strategy that works. If you've got power that works, that makes economic sense, he's going to be behind it. But so you'll see the dereg on the power. You'll see, and the issue on data centers today, in our practice, we're working on 22 data center sites across the United States. And it's all driven by power. Who has power? And there's such a power shortage in the nation that if a community has the power, then we will start working with you on a data center. And so with the dereg, you'll get more power. There'll be a huge boom in natural gas peaking plants to help keep the power going, especially married with the renewables. And so it's optimistic. And it'll be much easier to get the data centers built that we need in this environment than what we had. Right. And certainly not also put an advertisement. It depends what state you're in.
Right.
And so if you're in Texas, permitting is very quick.
Right.
I've got a great friend of mine at MP Materials, built the largest magnet building in the country, new magnet building in the country. He came to Texas, it took him 3 weeks to get an air quality permit. He's from California. He said, Ross, in California would have taken 3 years. So you need to pick your state, but states like Texas, with the Donald Trump, you'll see a huge infrastructure explosion.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think we were speaking earlier, and you said a lot of the issues are at the local level. So it really is going to depend, at least in the U.S., where you go.
Now, Donald Trump will set the table, but then it's going to be the local community on the data centers, and a lot of data centers aren't popular. And so it takes a lot of just boots on the ground, teams working with the local community, working with neighborhoods to get these data centers approved. But that's what we do. And the positive on a data center, the pitch for a good data center is huge investment, tremendous amount of property tax, very low number of employees, because most politicians want a lot of jobs. And I'll say, look, we all want jobs, but if you can do a $2 billion data center and you tax a $2 billion building on property tax and it's got 50 to 100 people, those 50 to 100 people don't take a lot of city service, schools, roads, etc. But the income, bottom line income is huge. So the financial play of a data center is what I emphasize over the job play.
Interesting. And Dom, obviously, I want to get to you as well. And some people in the room will have heard you speak earlier, but for those who haven't, can you just talk a little bit about the internet computer, sort of what it is, and why it might be necessary, particularly as we move into a world of increasingly ubiquitous AI, and then we can sort of marry the two together. Why? Because I know you need data centers too to build the internet computer.
We do, and the machinery that runs the internet computer is owned by currently 137 different companies. It's growing all the time, and they're distributed all over the world. And I don't know the number of countries. There's technical people who could tell you. You can see it on the dashboard, but it's pretty much worldwide. I know there are even machines running in Southern Africa now. So the internet computer is conceived as an extension of the internet that allows the internet to host software. So the internet has been, a transformational, seminal invention in the history of man, and it really came into being about 1983 when Vint Cerf and his partner, I forget his name, invented TCP/IP, and then it grew very quickly in the 90s and became the internet that we all know today. Now the internet connects software, so it connects your web browser on your laptop to a web server that gives it the content. It connects your WhatsApp client to another WhatsApp client, or a Zoom video call to another one, and so on. And that's been its purpose. But today, the network doesn't do compute. It connects you to services that are running software. So the idea is that the internet could be extended so that as well as connecting software, it could host software. And that's only part of it. So one of the really cool things about the internet is that it's decentralized, and the underlying science makes sure that some of the roots go down on the internet continues running, and that the history of that has roots in the Cold War, and work in the 1960s. Bell Labs and places like that designed packet switching networks that would continue providing communication services in the event of a nuclear war. And that's why, of course, we've seen some undersea cables being pulled up recently, and the internet always continues running brilliantly. And so, when thinking about how if you have an internet computer, you also have to, you also want to introduce some of these kind of fantastic properties, and there's a lot of complex computer science that goes into making the internet computer work. But for example, when you run software on this network, it's tamper-proof, so it doesn't need protecting by traditional cybersecurity measures like firewalls and anti-intrusion software and anti-malware. Within the fault bands of the network, it's unstoppable, so you don't have to worry about your software crashing and needing restarting. And you can also do things that you can't do on a traditional platform. So software can be autonomous, which means it can run without a human owner, or it can run under the control of a digital governance system. And a lot of work has been done to reduce some of the hidden costs involved in compute. So one of the biggest is the time involved in creating new software systems like web applications and internet services. And the internet computer supports a new kind of serverless software that greatly simplifies actually the implementation of some of these things. And a big emerging focus is, how do we enable AI to build solo? So there's this vision for of a self-writing internet, and a self-writing internet is one where you can talk to the internet or talk to an AI that might be running separately or as part of the internet, and it completely solo will create web applications and internet services and so on, and also allow you to update them in production just through more talking. So there's that, and we were addressing that by
It
leveraging.
makes sort of everyone a web developer in a way. Anyone
Yeah.
can build it, or a software developer. Anyone can build their own software, have it hosted. The software is hosted on the internet computer, but because you have that sort of large language model interface to it, you don't have to be an expert in the protocols of the internet computer to build software on the internet computer.
Yeah, so the idea is that 8 billion people are empowered to become, in a way, developers and system owners, and the idea is that in the long run, you'll be able to create extremely sophisticated things. But this year for sure, vast numbers of SMEs will find they can just talk to the internet in a way and create the specific CRM functionality they need. For example, people will find that if your family's having a wedding, that creating a wedding planner app to organize gifts and arrangements will become extremely easy.
So you can create a lot of bespoke software on the fly, as opposed to having to always buy sort of off-the-shelf packages that somebody else maintains. And
Exactly.
yeah. Now, Ross, I want to ask you, because I understand that some of this at least resonated with a story, and I don't know how many people know this, but your father was a very famous American businessman, famous American politician, and you said had invested with Next and Steve Jobs, and that at some point your father and Steve Jobs were talking about the future of computing, and some of this was sort of the vision even back then, right?
Well, this was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I'd be amazed as Steve, my father, they're talking, Steve would say, look, the Library of Congress in the palm of your hand, which I thought was a really big idea. Well, by golly, look what happened.
Right.
And so to be around these great visionaries, and my father started EDS in the 60s. And he was considered the founder of technology services. Came from IBM, started EDS, and then he sold EDS to General Motors, and then we invested with Steve and Next, and they were great friends. And it's great to see these two visionaries and what they were able to do.
Yeah.
But look today. Look at our visionaries that we have today. Incredible tech leaders all over the world. It's a very exciting time.
Interesting. And Don was talking about the 137 countries, where you currently have hosting for the internet computer. Now, Ross, I know you're not just building data centers in the U.S. You're building, you said, a couple other places in the world.
We build in the U.K., Poland, and Germany.
Yeah. And what's the experience like building in those other countries compared to the U.S.? I'm curious.
It's really, these big industrial buildings and working, it's almost the same. It's the same issues. It's the same local politics. It's the same government regulation. Poland is really pro-growth. Poland's like the Texas of Europe, again, being very parochial.
They should use.
But they're aggressive and they're hungry and they want to work. And when you're in Poland, that team, they remember what it was like before they were free, and so it's a great place to operate. Germany is great because it is very difficult to find land to build, and once you do find land to build, there's no competition because the regulation is so tight. And the UK is good, but it's also highly regulated. Takes a lot of work to find the land. It's very expensive land. But once you get it, you're almost guaranteed a good business.
Interesting. So someone was telling me earlier at this conference that from one of the energy companies that actually to get new power built in Europe is slightly faster than it is on average in the U.S. I don't know if that's been your experience.
Poland is fast.
Yeah.
Because Poland wants to move. It depends on your state.
Yeah.
And so go back to the United States, it depends on the state and the leadership of that state. Your public leaders are critical. And your city leaders are critical. Your mayors are critical. If you've got enlightened mayors that want to get things done, they can get things done. But a lot of our leaders don't understand business. A lot of them don't really understand how to run an organization. And they're the ones that you have to go in and help and coach them on how to get things done. But everybody wants to win. And so you teach them to win.
Interesting. Dom, I want to ask you a question on energy usage. I mean, you did say, there's some energy intensity to what you're doing with the internet computer. The fact that you have to have multiple copies potentially in different locations for the resilience and for the voting that takes place among the nodes. That could result in more energy usage, and people are worried about that. I think around the world, they see this new technology, AI. They also see Web3, but you're sort of taking two technologies that tend to be relatively energy intensive and marrying them. But you were saying actually in some ways you think there could be energy saving. So maybe you could drill down on that a bit more, explain that a bit more.
Yeah, so the internet computer may support standard AI workers, which is a bit different, but currently, the AI that's running on the internet computer is just running in the mode of standard software on the internet computer. And when you upload software to the internet computer, the network actually is replicating its computation and data, and you don't control that directly. And it does that so that it can run the math of the protocol guarantees that it's tamper-proof and unstoppable and so on. So it is true that the internet computer does replicate computation of data, and that in fact this replication is how in combination with advanced mathematics is how it creates a platform that's tamper-proof and unstoppable and so on. But the network does tailor, first of all, the replication to the security and resilience needs. So actually internally the network is replicating financial data more than it's replicating application data. And increasingly that's something that's tunable with people building on it. So that's one point. But the other is actually when you look at traditional IT, there's actually an awful lot of replication of computation and data going on that's not immediately obvious. So if you think about even a simple SQL database, well, at scale, you don't just run one node. There'll be like a master database node and some slave database nodes. So of course, the slave database nodes are replicating all the data and computation of the master node. And then you have things like transaction logs, like database transaction logs, and there's a whole, and backups, all kinds of stuff. And then you've got maybe a bunch of different web servers in front that are caching data or maybe using memcached, and they're all replicating data. And then you've got content distribution networks replicating data. So when you look into traditional IT, you find there's actually a lot of hidden replication, both of data and of computation. So the internet computer does replicate computation and data, but it does it in a very deliberate way that allows it to derive these really important security and resilience properties and make them tunable. So with respect to computation generally, I think it kind of balances out. I think our aim is, for many use cases, to make the internet computer more efficient than traditional IT. With respect to AI, which of course is a compute and power hog, but is so incredibly useful, we're inevitably going to want to run it. Actually, it's pre-training that really consumes the vast amounts of power. So, Elon Musk built Colossus to train XAI Grok, not really to run inference so much. So the moment the internet computer isn't a practical solution for training, it's only a practical solution for inference that you need to be completely secure and resilient.
And of course, I guess if you look at the overall workload of AI, much more is going to be inference than training. There's only going to be a handful of companies that are going to train models, probably.
Yeah, I mean and that's very, very energy intensive, and it really is a very centralized task. I invite anyone it's very interesting to investigate the design of Colossus. Actually, there's a fantastic feature on it in Tom's Hardware, and it's full of, not only explained, but got tons of pictures from inside. I mean, it's a really amazing feat of data center engineering, but it relies upon these huge clusters of GPUs being in the same place, since they're all connected by miles and miles and miles of fiber optic cabling that makes it possible to shuffle the data between these GPUs during the pre-training process. And it may be that someone works out how to train AI more efficiently, but for the moment,
so this is not something, training will not be.
You would never know
on the internet computer. All right, that's a
not yet anyway.
Yeah, and I know that there's been some efforts at distributed training, but so far it's very small models that have been done that way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of progress, and I'm sure eventually it'll be possible, but not for a while.
Right. And Ross, when you're building these data centers, are you taking into account what is the customers, what are they going to be doing exactly in the data center? Is it going to be training where they're going to need hundreds of thousands of GPUs put together, or is it a variety of compute where it might be CPU and GPU mix, or does it not really matter to you as the data center, the guy who's building out the data centers, finding the real estate? Do you just kind of leave that up to the customer?
Truth is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here to take care of the client. Well, it's the power requirement.
Right.
And how much power they need, and that's what drives what we're able to do for them. But a lot of they're building the model. And that's where, if you build a model, you can get farther away from the population base because latency is not as important, correct?
Yeah.
And so the models, I mean, the centers that want, like our big data center for Facebook, 170 megawatts, it's $2 billion project. They needed latency, and they wanted to be really close to the key fiber highways.
Right.
And so those are different. Now, if you want latency, that's a whole different real estate challenge because you've got to get closer
And
to
do they come?
population.
Do they
centers.
come to you and say, "We want a data center with these latency properties. Can you find us one?" Or is it more that you're out there scoping? Okay, well, here's a utility with excess power. We can build. A
Well,
data center there."
we're a little unique because they went in our big project alliance, which is 27,000 acres. It's in Dallas, Fort Worth. It's basically grafted on top of the city. And so we had all the fiber in place. We've got another 400 megawatts in place. And we've got a huge program that we built, not really seeing data centers as a user. We saw it as just mainstream factories. And we've got factories for Bell Helicopter. We're building the next generation helicopter. So, but it's interesting how the power demand of a factory is so small compared to what these data centers want. So this one we had built and we were ready, and they came to us.
Got it.
Interesting factoid about that. I think you circumnavigated the globe in it. But
In a helicopter.
Yeah, as a young man, right?
A long time ago. 82. You do these things when you're young.
Right.
But go look at the world in 1982. It's a lot different today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We didn't have GPS, no cell phones. I mean, it was the old-fashioned Omega navigation, long-range, high-frequency radio. But in our world, we thought it was great because that's all we had.
that sounds hairy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Dom, I want to talk a little bit about where you see some of the first use cases potentially of the internet computer. Will it be running AI models, or will it be doing other things? Where do you really think, and is there particular industries where do you think you're going to see first advantage?
Well, I think AI will be important to adoption. I mean, there's already hundreds of services running on the internet computer, and they range across everything. And at the moment, there's a lot of Web3. And when you have a network that can run tamper-proof, unstoppable, autonomous code, then naturally, it can be used for applications like DeFi or creating. Actually, there are social networks, small social networks that are now running on the internet computer under the control of digital governance systems. So I think all of that will continue to grow. I think the real adoption is going to come from the self-writing internet, and that's because people can just will be able just to get what they want by talking in a way to the network. And these applications they'll create are like, sovereign. They're not a captive customer of anyone. They're tamper-proofs. Then they don't have to worry about the security. And of course they're updatable, which is actually more of a challenge than it sounds. I think with respect to running AI on the internet computer, at least it will be comparatively efficient as traditional IT, but at the moment, it's less so. And also at the moment, there's limitations on the number of parameters you can use. So we're just getting into large language models now. Previously, it's been just neural networks. You'll certainly see by the summer some reasonably powerful large language models. But the reason that you will want to run a model on the internet computer on a public network at greater expense is that you'll want the model to be immune to cyber attacks and resilient and unstoppable. So imagine the example I always use is imagine a law firm, and the law firm could run a standard open source model like Llama. They're incredibly powerful already. Combine it with something called a RAG infrastructure, which is a kind of memory. It gives the AI a kind of memory, and into that memory, the law firm would place all their interactions with clients, all the emails, all the legal filings, all the filings against their clients, maybe some canonical legal texts and so on. Maybe pre-train or fine-tune the Llama model a bit for legal stuff. And now, it'd be an incredibly useful resource for the partners of the law firm and enable them to better service their clients. Now, this will be fantastically useful. They'll better service their clients. They can prepare for trial faster. But imagine if that was hacked. Now this AI infrastructure has become like what I call a hot wallet for data. All this incredibly sensitive data in one place, ready to be exfiltrated. And if that happened, you could ruin the lives of a large number of your clients, and your reputation as a law firm would be toast. So, first of all, the law firm will be very concerned about, if they're going to adopt AI technology, how can they ensure this, data exfiltration doesn't happen? And secondly, it might be that before the availability of the model, it might take a partner like 3 weeks to prepare for a big trial. And with the model, they might be able to prepare for trial in a few days. Can you imagine what would happen if, a few days before trial, the partner logged on to the AI to prepare, and it's unfortunately been encrypted with ransomware or crashed or something like that? It'd be an absolute disaster. So there are a lot of use cases like that where people will trade increased computational expense for security and resilience.
And in some cases, I guess it might make the difference between using it and not using it, because that's definitely one of the things that is slowing down adoption in some verticals of large language models and other kinds of AI, is the concern that this is this huge attack surface that you're opening up potentially to bad actors to use again. And there is this concern about hooking up like put everything in a RAG. I mean, people don't want to do that because of that vulnerability. You're creating this huge target.
Totally. And even, the same technology will be, internet computer is like the public network. But the same technology can be used in private settings. Even things like military settings, like everyone's going to require things like tactical decision support, not only in business, but for example, in the military. And if you go to a airbase like Bagram, there's like ruggedized servers, and if artillery lands on them, then you lose your IT services. But in the future, this kind of technology will be used to ensure that not only do you have resilient applications, but also resilient AI. So I think like this idea will catch on in the long term. Everyone will begin to demand that their critical infrastructure is kind of immune to cyber attack, and also resilient against the failure of individual pieces of the underlying hardware.
Interesting. And I know we're in a room full of a lot of people probably interested in Web3. There are a lot of other people out there, with other solutions saying they have AI agents on blockchain. There's a lot of people talking about blockchain is going to be the solution to data transparency and some of the issues we have around data governance. I know you're a little skeptical of that. I don't know if you could explain that skepticism, but you think that this solution, the internet computer, is maybe a preferable one, a more robust solution than simply putting it on chain.
Well, I think there's, the vernacular is complicated in Web3, right? So a lot of the time when people talk about something being on chain, what they mean is that it's on cloud and there's an associated token.
Right.
I think I was one of the first guys to start using this terminology on chain back in 2015. And on chain to me means actually running on the blockchain, and I don't think I'm on chain just because I have tokens. But look, I think there are many examples where you can have an off-chain AI, which is what they are in Web3 at the moment, which holds a key that enables it via some interface to interact with financial ledgers or financial services. That can work, and that's what people are doing. I think the challenges are that if went with that paradigm, really you have to limit the amount of money available to the AI, because otherwise it's got a hot wallet, and if it's hacked, you can steal the money. So then the question is, can you fund the AI with enough money to book airline tickets for you and things like that? What is the limit? How much money can you put into the AI's bank account,
Right.
so to speak? But I think all of that stuff can work, and I think it can be big. I think agents are going to be a really big thing. I think there are some challenges, though, when you want to move into areas like smart wallets. So there's a thing on the internet computer called Oisy, which is fully centralized, tamper-proof, on-chain wallet service, if you like. And the plan is to add some intelligence to that, so you can say things like, you can say to the wallet, or if you're on holiday, you can pick up the phone and say, if you're a Web3 guy, if Bitcoin hits 100,000 again, swap half for ETH or ICP or something. Or you can say, hey, pay everyone maybe you have a small company, engineers, pay everyone in the company a bonus of 100 USD at the end of the week. And the AI will create instructions that the wallet can execute eventually. But if that AI is trusted, obviously it could just insert an instruction to send all your money to some hacker's wallet.
Right.
So I think within Web3 we have to delineate where we need AI to be on-chain, like running as a kind of smart contract, which is, immune to cyber attack, tamper-proof and so on, and where it can run off-chain. And look, there are lots of cases for off-chain AI. And imagine, like, if you think about things like TikTok and Instagram Reels, that's AI powered. You don't need like AI running on the internet computer to do content recommendation. That'd be a complete waste of money, just increasing your computational expense for no reason. But if you've got an application where, the AI is going to drive a wallet, your wallet, you probably want it to be on chain if you like. And similarly, if you're a law firm and you want to create a kind of Delphi for your firm that helps you service your clients and contains all this super confidential, super sensitive data, again, you probably want to run it in a tamper-proof way.
Ross, I want to come back to you just before we finish. I'm just curious, and it's a question I ask a lot of business people here. How are you using AI maybe in your business? I know that Microsoft, for instance, had said they're very interested in using AI to try to speed up the permitting process around trying to get new power plants approved to help power.
Well, for sure. I mean, AI, we're like every company, you're trying to embed it in everything you do. And so when I talk to mayors, I say, why do you need a building permit? That's a really old concept. I mean, AI could run your building permits instantaneously and we wouldn't have to wait. So you're going to see huge efficiencies in government. Go back to my comment about mayors. If you've got enlightened mayors, they can completely reform City Hall and give every taxpayer better service at a better value. So I think there's a public sector AI when it runs through. I'm really simple. This isn't complicated.
Right.
But you put all these human beings in a room.
Are you
in this bureaucracy.
that happen? Are you starting to see?
Well, most of the mayors, when I say get rid of your planning department, they there's not a lot of courage in politics.
Right. Sure.
Now Trump's got courage, but most people don't have a lot of courage in politics. But you keep talking to them. So look, you don't need building permits.
Right.
And try to get them out of the box and get these cities more efficient. But back to AI wallet. But then look at the military, AI kill chain, and so that's going to be a very, very complex issue to work your way through. But I bet that the military will help perfect a lot of these technologies earlier than the civilians do, that then we can adapt into the civilian world. If history's a guide, the military can push it faster, further, because they don't have the rules that we have. They'll then impact the civilian world.
I think we may see here. It's been interesting because so far with this technology, it's been one of the rare exceptions where the private sector has been way ahead, actually, of what the military has been doing. And the military is very interested in catching up, and they're very interested in bringing these technologies and integrating them. But they do, to Dom's point, have certain requirements that are a little different than the civilian world around resilience, tamper-proof, and light footprint in some cases, or being able to that's another issue. Is like if you're in an area where you can't actually access the cloud very easily because of jamming, denial of radio communication, whatever it may be.
Yeah, totally. I think ICP, not necessarily the internet computer, but the internet computer protocol has all kinds of applications, especially in private settings, corporate settings, government settings, and militaries, but also NGOs, like people. I mean, there's people thinking about you can have like a sort of near area cloud, like in people like wearable devices, and in the future, people will be able to talk to that when they're connected to the wider internet to create applications like cloud applications they carry with them that are replicated, and even with the loss of some of these devices, it'll continue functioning. Useful for anything: military applications, refugee applications, disaster zone applications. There's a lot of. I think in the end, look, I mean, the modern world runs on compute. There's 8 billion people on the planet. There's no way humanity could support that many people without massive automation. Compute also, of course, is essential to our social lives now. Everyone's on social media. So I think that when you think about computers like societal foundations, it becomes clear that this has to continue running under all circumstances, ideally. Like, these foundations can't fail us. So among the many frontiers, like AI is one, but I believe security and resilience are additional frontiers. Cybercrime cost the world apparently $9.2 trillion last year. It's unimaginable amount of money that would have been much better spent on other things. So there's a really good reason to address these problems. And I think with AI particularly, the analogy I use is like, back in London, 25 years ago, there was no sat nav. And you had this thing called the London A to Z, and London's not built like an American city on a grid. It's a maze that goes back to Roman times. And pretty much if you were going to go somewhere in an area you didn't know, you'd always need the London A to Z to find your way there. And everyone had a London A to Z in their car. And this was a skill. Now, along came smartphones. And I remember I actually sold a bunch, the long story, Microsoft XDA phones. And they had the first sat nav on the phone. And all of a sudden, we started using sat nav to find a way around cities. And we sort of lost, and in the countryside too, we lost the skill. I'd challenge anyone today to go to London and put your phone away and try and drive somewhere and use an A to Z. I find it incredibly difficult. We've come to depend on the technology, and it's freed our brain up for more useful things. And I think that AI is going to be like that on steroids. It's going to be incredibly useful in all kinds of ways, many of which we can't even imagine now. And we're going to come to depend on the AI. And that means the AI shouldn't get hacked, the data involved shouldn't get corrupted, the AI should always be available. And so, that's the problem that we put ourselves to.
Absolutely. I'm very conscious that we're now standing between a lot of people and the bar at the end of a long day. You've been a great audience, very patient listening to us. This was a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Ross. Thank you to Dom for joining me.
Jeremy, thank you. God, good to see you.
It's fun to come back again.